businesses are. I'm curious though, one thing that I've always felt, it seems like a pretty big challenge and kind of that a lot of manual input needs to go into balancing the marketplace, right? If these changes are happening, I mean, I guess I'm curious how you guys at Uber react to that, right? Because obviously you've got, a million or two drivers out there, some doing part-time, some doing full-time, some like me driving very sporadically. I'm probably a very bad, unreliable driver, for example, right? But I mean, is there a lot of manual kind of input? And if so, what goes into kind of keeping that marketplace balance? Because you're talking about all these changes, and at the other end of these rider changes need to be drivers ready and, to fulfill those rides in sort of a quick and efficient manner, right?
Yeah. I mean, the good news for us is, having built a marketplace that is tech driven, there's a lot of stuff that happens in real time or near real time, with the technology. I mean, I just think about Surge, right? Like Surge is the ultimate sort of real-time tool, automated real-time responding. And so, that will respond. And then even some of our incentive technologies, as we think through, like, where do you put a streak bonus, that will shift, based on the tech. So there's a lot of tech that gives us leverage here, right? Because you can't manually manage all these marketplaces. But my team spends a lot of time studying it, right? And that will change like our strategy. We'll think through, how do you tune Surge in an environment where there's more demand outside the core versus in the cores. We'll think through, like, what should bonuses be when you have that type of environment.
For sure. So I think Surge is a really good example of an automated one. I can kind of like pretty clearly see how that's automated. You guys have been doing it forever. And obviously, I think it's one of the products that, works really well. People obviously may complain about it, but at the end of the day, they're still taking rides, and having that reliability, at whatever cost is often worth it, right? That's why people pay it. But I'm curious, actually it's interesting. I would have kind of personally guessed that bonuses were more manual. You talked about that, the streaks and basically the weekly trip based bonuses, right? Because I mean, as a driver, we see these changing every week, right? Like, it's very rare that a bonus offer from one week to the next is the same. So you kind of, it seems like to a driver that, like, oh, some guy or a girl, must be behind the scenes, changing this or giving me more or lower. And it sounds like that may be partially due to computer algorithm. I guess, what are the inputs that go into that though? Because someone has to be deciding that, or it has to be looking at some inputs, right?
Yeah. So it's a lot more automated than you think. Because we just wouldn't have the people on the team to manually review and set it. So there's a lot of checking in the back end. I mean, the inputs for us is we're constantly looking at where do we think we're going to have more drivers or less drivers, and more rider sessions and less rider sessions. And based on, either past experience, we've been in this business a while now, like, we have lots of data based on past experience. We sort of know where those demand patterns happen. Or you have a New Year's Eve recently where you sort of see it in the future. We have some pretty good algorithms and tools now that set the offers. What do we think is going to be enticing for drivers? What are people going to respond to? What do we think the efficiency of those offers are going to be for us in terms of getting drivers and riders to convert? And then my team does do a cursory check on, are the offers coming out right? Are they in the right places in the major geographies? But we've gone are the days. When I joined in 2016, there was a lot of them were being set manually. There was someone sitting there crafting them each week. But we really automated all that in the last few years.
Yeah. I mean, the historical data makes a lot of sense too, right? Obviously, Uber is, I think I saw a tweet that I want to say it's like 12 or 13 years old, right? Since the first screenshot that I've seen posted. So it's been around for a while, a lot of data racked up. So I'm assuming there's a lot of historical, New Year's Eve data, January to April, which I think sometimes is referred to as the winter slowdown, right? But what about more dynamic events? Like maybe like Super Bowl is coming up here. I guess that's sort of historical, but, also kind of, a one-off thing in Los Angeles. Super Bowl is coming up. Weather, I know, plays a big impact. How are those taken into account?
Yeah, when you get something like the Super Bowl, there's a mix of automated and manual, right? Like the team will think about that more specifically, because there's, our business is, I think, really neat in that we have this intersection of, like, well, there's real world constraints. Like, there's only so many cars you can get into the Super Bowl parking lots, and where they need to go, and things like that. So My team will spend a lot of time thinking through, okay, what's the right incentive structure on those? But it does still get automated by the tool. We're not like manually processing that. So that makes sense. Weather, I've tried to predict weather. We're not good.
Well, no one can predict weather. It's literally, I looked out my
like,
window right now and it was just sprinkling. So that's sort of
exactly.
weird. But...
So weather, we're much more, unless it's like a major event, hurricanes, things like that, where you're actually responding to an emergency, you're shutting down a market. We are, and you're preparing for those things, make sure people are safe. It's really hard for us to respond to like you said, like meteorologists can barely forecast weather. I stopped trying to forecast weather a long time ago. So we kind of set a strategy, and for us, we sort of set it for, we set what we think the world, the marketplace is going to look like. And we look out 3, 4, 5, 6, at least weeks in a row, ahead, for many reasons. One is like, we don't want to thrash, think about it, we don't want to thrash offers a lot, right? There's value for us, and we think about that a lot around, the consistency of the offers we put out. People are relying on these offers and making plans around what they're going to earn in a given week. So we think about that, and so you kind of take that into account. And then like the marketplace, for the most part, kind of looks similar in different phases, right? Like to your point, like January is historically a little bit slower than December, right? So you kind of know that, and you plan accordingly. We don't want to, we're not sitting there like day to day thinking about how do we want to change offers.
Yeah. I mean, I guess one more point before we move on. I mean, one thing that sort of always struck me from having so much experience on the driver side is I feel like, outside of the driver experience, like I feel like driver pay bonuses, like weekly incentives, whether it's quests or trip-based bonuses like streaks, whatever it might be. It seems like it's a pretty integral part of, a driver's pay, especially in, the bigger markets, the LA, New York City, Chicago. And it feels like to me, like people outside of the driver world are always kind of like shocked, like, wow, the driver's pay was like 30% bonus pay this week. And I'm like, it's kind of always like that. I mean, how integral is that bonus pay? Like, I kind of imagine like, you can't turn it off completely one day, right? Because if a driver makes 30% less one week, it's probably not great on the marketplace. But I mean, what are your thoughts in general on, that component of the pay and like just how integral it is?
Yeah, I mean, we realize it's integral, and in major markets, drivers rely on it, and it's part of the package of like why you drive on Uber, right? You get I think even strong base earnings, plus you get these bonuses, and so we do view it as integral into the package, though it does provide some flex, right? In terms of us, manage the marketplace. So, I think it's both. I mean, we definitely, and we put a lot of investment in like, how do you make it work for drivers, like offers that are attractive and they want to go after. How do you make it then work for the marketplace? Like drivers are showing up in the right places at the right times. And then how do you make it for Uber, right? And that what we can afford to do.
Yeah, makes sense. So